Okay, everybody. Yes, now the presentation seems to come in order. Okay, Bjørn, da har vi. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Um, it's a pleasure to talk to you from Stavanger, Norway, and to be a part of this. Thanks for the invitation, and it's nice to be a part of this conference. Uh, my name is Krogh, and I've been the museum director of the Norwegian Petroleum Museum since we started the building of the museum in 1997. Uh, and I will give you a brief outline of some of the history of the Norwegian oil and gas history and how the museum operates within this. And my presentation will be twofold. Uh, First, a little bit about the oil and gas history of Norway in short, in very short. My colleague Bjørn told you a little bit about this yesterday, and of course, we have 15 minutes now, and it has to be short. And then I will tell you also about the Petroleum Museum, how it's organized, and our narrative, our storytelling. So I'll just try to move on here. Well, just to start with the big picture, Norway, you're in Bubka in Poland. We maybe had thought to travel down to visit you because you're on our bucket list to sometime visit your museum. We have an example of the Polish lamp in our museum. We got that as a gift from you when we opened here in 1999. So you're surely on our bucket list to pay a visit sometime. But just briefly about Norway, this slide just gives you an outline of who are we. We are 5.2 million people. We have quite a large area. And if you look at the yellow scratch here, we have an area offshore, which is 6 times bigger than our rather large country onshore. And this is also why we have all of the oil and gas activities in the North Sea. So everything is offshore. Uh, Norway, in energy terms, is highly self-sufficient based on hydroelectric power. So we are fortunate to have rich energy sources, both in hydroelectric and, of course, now in the oil and gas business. Approximately 175,000 jobs are related to oil and gas in Norway. And Stavanger, then, as you see down to the left there on the southwest coast of Norway, is the fourth largest city in Norway with about 130,000 population. And we have become what we call the oil capital or the oil and energy capital of Norway, located close to the oil fields offshore. Okay, just a very brief backdrop to what actually happened when Norway struck oil and gas. This is a drawing of the North Sea in the 50s, where there was a discussion whether there would be any oil and gas in this sea basin. And findings in the late 50s in Groningen outside Holland suggested that there would be geological circumstances that could produce oil and gas in the North Sea basin. So it started in the early 60s. There was a long period of surveys going on. American geologists came from Phillips Petroleum. They wanted to try to fool the Norwegian government into giving them a sole license to exploit. They didn't get that, but the starting point was quite difficult. And when we got on with our investigations, I was trying the next slide, yeah. To make a long story quite short, we struck oil in 1969 after being exploring since 1966. So there was a 3-year period actually where there were a lot of uncertainties going on whether there would be any findings of oil and gas in the North Sea. But production started in 1971, And my colleague Björn also used this slide yesterday because it's a quite historical picture of our Prime Minister, Krogh at the time, who stated the famous words that this might be the starting point of an historical era, providing be of great economic importance to Norway. And those words that were said in June 1971, they have really proved to be right. The columns, the figures right on this slide shows the income that Norway have had over these years, and also the lower slide, the difference between oil and gas. We are now looking at being more an oil and gas nation than an oil nation as we move on. And, and the income figures to the right, upper right, is extremely important to understand the revenue that Norway has gained from oil and gas, because we have a taxation system that really puts large taxes on the revenues created by the oil companies. We also have an arrangement called the SDFI, State Direct Financial Interest, which is very rare in international terms. It's an arrangement where the state takes direct economic interest in every field being built out, and it creates more revenue than in many other countries. And then, of course, we have the state oil company, Statoil, which now is called Equinor, where also the state becomes a large income from the dividend. So the state income system is, I would say, a success if you look at the political objective of making the revenues as high as possible for the country who owns the resources. So, just to sum up the oil and gas history in Norway, which I would call, I think it's fair to say that it is a quite unique history. We don't have a long history. We found Ekofisk, the first commercial field in '69, and it's still producing. We have what we can say is a national governance through license system, which keeps the government very much in control of what is happening in the offshore sector. I mentioned the successful fiscal tools, the high taxes, the state direct financial interest, and Equinor, which gives the state high revenues. It's a fact that the oil has been distributed throughout Norwegian society in a way that it has created a high degree of wealth distribution through our country. If you look at the size of Norway, we provide today approximately 2% of oil and 3% of gas globally, which is not much. If you ask Norwegians, they would think that we produce a lot more than that, but the fact is that we are quite small, but it's an enormously important industry for our national economy. 200,000 jobs, and the final bullet point here, the Petroleum Fund, which today is 11,000 billion Norwegian kroner. It's an enormous amount of money, and we have this 3% rule that the state is now spending on the annual budget. The state is spending about 3% of it. So actually, the money that Norway takes out of the oil industry, out of the oil today, is actually being taken as a revenue from the fund. And that's a quite unique position to be in. Okay, that was just a little bit short about the history of oil and gas in Norway. The museum, we opened the museum in 1999. I had the pleasure. It's a version of me to the left here without a beard, and it's a few years ago. King was here. We had a grand opening. The idea was launched already in 1974, just at the very, very beginning of the oil industry in Norway. We are organized as a self-owned independent foundation, which was established during the planning of the museum. And we are, as you might, we are a quite young museum. We like to look for ourselves as a quite young museum, still trying to find out what kind of role we're going to play in telling this story. the bylaws of the museum, which we are not going to go into any deeply, but we are, as museums should, we are trying to both collect evidence on technology, economic issues, social and political effects on this industry on Norwegian society, and we're going to develop exhibitions. And of course, we are we are true to the ICOM definition of what a museum is all about. We have a vision because we think it's important to state publicly what we see as our own role in society. So we believe that what is important for us is to share knowledge and experience in the museum that could create insight and interest for the industry. And that is also important in the sense that oil and gas has become more and more controversial due to climate issues and due to production and CO2 emissions, which of course is related to this. The world is still dependent 80% upon fossil fuels to cover the energy demand, and we are a part of this. And we believe that providing knowledge and showing things in our museum could be to be could enlighten people to get a bigger understanding of what it's all about. We have some core values as well. We would like to be open, independent, and we also believe that we should be proud of what the oil and gas industry has given our country. Maybe some of you have been to the museum in Stavanger. We think it's a beautiful building. The architecture is what we put in three categories. We describe it as the open coastal landscape with the cylinders towards the sea. We actually have our drilling platforms and production platforms on site in the sea. This is in the middle of the center of Stavanger. And from the other angle, from the other side, just to give you a few brief bullet points on what we have. We have about 5,000 square meters. We have, of course, also some conference facilities, library and archives, restaurant. We are today 25 people employed here. We were about maybe 10 or 12 when we started in 1999, and so we have doubled the number of people working here over these 20 years. When it comes to visitors numbers, we had, before the corona hit us, we had nearly 150,000 people. This has been down to half now over the 2 last years because of the corona restrictions. And we are funded by 50% public grants, and the major sources of income is from the Ministry of Oil and Energy, which is the largest. And we have also the local municipality and Stavanger local Stavanger kommune, local municipality, and Rogaland County. So we have together 50% of our income coming from public grants. Short about the organization, we have a small administration. Our main departments are the documentation and research department, which Björn is covering, who spoke to you yesterday. They are dealing with objects, they are dealing with industrial heritage projects, and they are dealing with documenting history, doing all the work that we are obliged to do to actually take care of all the sources that the history of oil and gas has to provide in Norway. We have an exhibition and outreach department with the responsibility of making new exhibitions and running the offer we have for schools coming to visit us. We have pedagogues and we are regularly taking classes from schools in the museum. And we do marketing, of course, and are trying to keep up the good numbers of visitors coming to see us. Finally, I will just give you a very brief outline of what the exhibition contains. This is the main topics of the exhibition. Of course, the geological history, the 200 million years or more, the oil and gas resources, what we call the technological frontier, what happens, what are the most advanced technological instruments or tools that we are deploying in the North Sea. We have something we call the case, which is exhibitions about accidents, things that has happened that shouldn't happen, and we have a few of those in our history. We have exhibitions about the diving activities, about the economy, and finally, quite lately, we have also made an exhibition on subsea technology. And as I mentioned, the subject of energy and climate change has also given quite a big position in our exhibition. 2 years ago, we opened a brand new exhibition, which is the title of Climate Change. Um, what are the sources running, uh, how climate is changing, and what could we do actually to try to buffer this? Yeah, and I see that I've spent my time. The rest of my presentation is just a few slides uh, with photos from the exhibitions. These are some big objects that we have in the exhibition. These are some models showing some of the installations that are placed in the North Sea on rather deep water. These are young kids with laboratory equipment doing experiments as a part of their education in the schools. This is from the drilling deck. We have quite a large object showing one of the driller cabins that have been operated in the North Sea in the 70s, and we have tried to make a kind of a surrounding for that. We have, of course, something for the kids. This is the helicopter where kids can climb up and run a helicopter onto an offshore platform. And this is the latest exhibition, which is a rather sophisticated audio-visual presentation of how it is to go subsea, how we go down to the bottom of the North Sea and do very advanced technological operations. So that will be just a very brief presentation of our museum in Stavanger. Thanks for listening, and hope to hope to visit you in Poland on another occasion.